Hi and welcome back to the next chapter of Boy in the Tower. Story time. So in the last chapter, Ben got sick or he wasn't feeling well, so Obi asked Addy to help him, and right at the end of the chapter it said he found out why their tower was the only tower left and hadn't fallen down yet, and in this chapter he's going to tell us why. So I wonder if any of you were right. Chapter 40. Obi takes me down to the basement again. I haven't been there since the day he got ready to leave the tower, the day that I taped the oxygen mask onto his face. I walk past open doors leading to rooms with bottles and bottles of water stored in them. There are so many of them. I know Obi looks after the water, but I had no idea we'd got so much. I say as much to Obi, but he doesn't say anything back. He just makes a small noise that half sounds like a grunt and half like a sigh. There's only one thing that's different about the basement now. The swing doors that lead to the bit of the corridor with the door that opens to the outside are sealed shut. There's tape over the crack between where the swing doors meet in the middle and the top of the doors. There's also some kind of fabric which is wedged all along the bottom. As if that isn't enough, there's this huge clear plastic sheet stretching right across the corridor that has been taped to the walls, a little way in front of the doors, so there's not even a tiny gap. Obi sees me looking at it. To keep spores out, he explains. There is another room that has lots of paint pots in it, and another that is full of bags of something white and something brown. This is the one we go inside. When I get close to it, I read the labels: rock salt, de-icing salt, icebreaker winter grit. Bags and bags of the stuff piled up almost to the ceiling. Obi throws one of the larger ones up onto his shoulder to carry in a single swoop. It looks heavy and cumbersome, but he starts walking out of the room with it hanging there on his shoulder, and I follow. We walk up to about the 5th floor, and when we get there, there is a little pile of things sitting in the middle of the corridor. There are a couple of brightly coloured scarves, a small plastic trowel, like the ones you use to dig up soil in the garden, a bucket and a pair of goggles. Obi puts the goggles on and ties both of the scarves around his face so you can't see any part of it. Just the dark plastic of his goggles stick out. He empties some salt from the bag into the bucket and picks up the little black trowel, and it looks like he's about to go into one of the flats when he turns back to look at me. It's like he's only just remembered that it's me who's come to help him. You need the scarf to cover your face. Go and get one from Dory and come straight back. I run up the stairs, and by the time I get to Dory's flat, I'm breathing so fast it's hard to speak. But Dory can understand me, even though I'm gasping so much. She gives me 2 scarves, which she pulls out of the bottom drawer of her chest. I ran back down to Obi, who is sitting exactly how I left him, as if he's been frozen to the spot the whole time I was away. He helps me wrap the scarves around my face and ties them so tight I think he's going to hurt. But it doesn't. It just feels hot and snug. I'm going to go into this flat and I'll be back in 5 minutes. If I don't come out, you must not come to get me. What do I do? I ask. Nothing. You just go back to Dory and tell her what happened. But what will have happened? I say, and I can hear what my voice has got a funny little waver to it. It sounds like it's going to break somehow. Well, it means the spores will have got me, Addy, Obi says gently. But why? I say, why are there spores in there? And that's when Obi tells me how he's been keeping us safe. Blutchers can't touch salt. They shrivel up and die if they touch it. Obi didn't know if it would work at first, but it's kept us safe the whole time. He found out about it just after everyone had left us behind, so he wasn't able to tell anyone. No one else knows. It won't take them long to find out, though, says Obi. Not even an old codger like me could work it out. But everyone's running scared from the spores. They're worried about spreading them around. That's why they've stopped flying over. That's why no one's come to rescue us. That's what Obi reckons anyway. I ask Obi what he does with the salt, and he says he just empties it out the window all over the bottom of the building. Most of it falls to the ground, protecting us with a circle of salt, but some of it lands on the window ledges on the way down. However it's landing, it's working. It's keeping the blutchers away. And Obi says it tells us another thing about the spores too. Because they aren't flying up and landing and growing on the higher floors, that means that they're not able to float high up. They're keeping close to the ground for some reason. But how did you know, Obi? How did you know to use salt? I ask him. Well, sounds a bit far-fetched, Addy, to tell you the truth, Obi says. But when I was your age, my mama used to read to me. Does your mum read to you?" "Yes," I nod, thinking briefly how I missed those times. The room would be lit by a lamp so we could only see the pages of the book in front of us. I leaned into Mum while her soft voice took us to faraway lands just by reading about them. "Well, my mama used to read to me," Obi goes on. "Just from one book, really. It was the only book we owned. It was full of stories. Stories, so many stories. My head's full of them. There was this one about a man who was so very angry with the people of his city that he salted it, the whole city, as a punishment, to curse it. How did it go again? Oh, and Abacum fought against the city all that day, and he took the city and he slew the people who were therein and beat down the city and sowed it with salt. The story went that if you salted the earth, then the land became infertile, like things wouldn't grow in it. Well, when I was little, I couldn't stop thinking about Abimelech, the man who ruined a city just by using something as simple and common as salt. The whole city not being able to grow a single thing to feed it. So when the butchers arrived, it reminded me of Abimelech. I thought, would they want to have a city that was salted, that was cursed? So I covered my face one day and went out there. Even with those spores around, I didn't get too close to them, but I threw some salt out and some of it hit a butcher. It wasn't a direct hit, but I'm telling you now, I don't know how, I don't know why, but it worked. It shriveled up right before my eyes. We already had a store of rock salt in the basement for when I grit the pathways in winter. But I got as many bags as I could, and I tried to ring the police and tell them what I found out. But when I finally got through to someone, they just said they would make a note of it and thanked me for my call. I don't think they really understood the importance of what I was saying. Or maybe they had lots of calls like that, people saying that they had the answer. Either way, no one wanted to hear what I had to say. We don't have to burn them, we just need to salt the earth and the butchers will go. But if I found this out, then someone else will too, and that's when they'll come back and rescue us. It's just a waiting game, Addy. We won't be here forever. I've never really properly thought about someone coming to rescue us. I think a part of me thought that we'd always just stay in the tower. Me, Mum, Obi and Dory, and Ben as well now. Had I forgotten how big the world was beyond the tower walls? What is it like to be outside? Obi tells me that he has to start salting now, and that he will come back out for salt after he's emptied each bucket. Then we'll move on to the next flat along so that he makes sure he goes round the whole tower. My job is just help put the salt into the bucket and make sure that Obi comes out of the flats okay. Obi says that he doesn't think that the spores will be flying this high, but you can't be too sure, so that's why we both have to wear scarves around our faces, just in case. I ask if Ben goes into the flats with Obi, but he says that he waits for him in the corridor, just like I do. There's no point in risking 2 lives, Obi says. We both pull our scarves tighter over our mouths and Obi goes into the first flat. He gives me his watch to look at, so I can see when 5 minutes have passed, and then he goes in. I watch the second hand go round and round the clock, but the minute hand never seems to move. Obi's watch is made of metal. I feel like it's weight in my hand. It's smooth and cool to touch. In the end, I give up looking at the hands of the watch and instead I pass it from one hand to the other and I count. On the 256th pass, I hear Obi's voice telling me to close my eyes, and when I say I have, I hear the door opening. After a few moments, Obi says that I can open my eyes again, and then we start putting more salt into the bucket, and Obi moves to the next door. We do the same thing over and over at every door on the floor until we run out of salt. Then we have to go and get more salt from the room in the basement and keep going until all of that runs out too. How do you know that's enough, Obi? I ask. I don't, he says. We'll have to keep an eye on them, see what they do next. If they look like they're growing towards us in the morning, we'll have to do it again. If the weather stays like this, we should be all right. I ask him what he means. Well, we've had dry weather for days and days now. If it starts to rain, then it'll wash the salt away. Then there'll be nothing to stop them. But it can rain at any time, I say, thinking of those days and days of rain that leaked from the sky just before the butchers arrived. Then I remember those days when you wake up to blue skies and sunshine, and by lunchtime there are grey clouds and deep puddles everywhere. Up to now we've been lucky with the weather, but it could change at any moment. We've got a lot of salt, Addy, says Obi. And remember, someone else will find out that it works against them too. I don't say anything, my mind still pondering the heavy rain clouds that until recently had choked our skies. Then they'll come get us. They surely will. I know Obi is trying to make me feel better, but his voice sounds a little bit different as he's speaking to me. He's too insistent, too bright, and his eyes look sad, although he's smiling with his mouth. It seems very much to me as if he's trying to hide something.